Hi guys, my name is Christine and I'm a dating, relationship and personal development coach. And today I'm talking about signs you are not compatible. So this is a dating advice video. So this is one that you may want to come back to before you go out on a date. So you can keep it fresh in your mind basically. So you know what you're looking out for, okay? So one of the first signs that you're not compatible is you have a difference in values, lifestyles, and wants. Okay, so what do you value when it comes to a relationship? Do you, value fidelity, or are you not so? Do you not mind that much? Do you not mind having like multiple partners when you're in a relationship? So if you want someone faithful, then that's a value obviously that you've got to look for, right? What other kinds of values do they have? So, for example, let's say you're someone who likes to be really neat and tidy, but is this person a slob? Okay, that's something else that you got to think about, right? Like if you're someone who's really neat and tidy, then if you are dating someone or you get into a relationship with someone who's a slob, that's going to really, really irritate you. So you need to find someone who also likes to keep things neat and tidy. It may not be to the same degree that you do, but if they don't mind clearing up, they're okay with doing that, they can pull their own weight when it comes to housework, that sort of thing, then it shouldn't bother you too much. Okay, so values like that, okay, are really important, and you've got to know what yours are, because if you end up with someone who has different values to you, it's going to make the relationship very difficult. Okay, so the other thing is lifestyle, right? So let's say you're someone who likes to get up at 5 a.m. and go for a run or go to the gym or do something like that, and you like to eat like a healthy breakfast, and at night time you like to be in bed by 9 o'clock. Okay, so if you start dating someone and let's say they like to, stay up watching Netflix and go to bed at like 2 in the morning, and then they like to get up at 9 or noon, right? And they don't eat very healthily. Let's say they're a bit of a couch potato. They'd rather eat things that are really greasy, like pizzas, burgers and stuff, which obviously are okay to a certain extent. I'm sure even people who are really healthy eat junk sometimes, but if that's their lifestyle and they eat like that all the time, then you can see how that difference in lifestyle is going to be a big mismatch, and it's not going to create a very happy couple. And the important thing that you need to know is when you're dating, you've got to realize that this person could be that person throughout the entire relationship. Okay, don't expect them to change. Always assume that when you start dating someone and when you start really getting to know them and you start to realize what their little idiosyncrasies are, their little habits and stuff, you got to realize that this could be who they are, right? And you have to assume that they're always going to be the way that they are, rather than hoping and praying that hopefully one day they're going to change or that you can change them. Okay, you shouldn't have to go into a relationship straight away and feel like there are a lot of things that you need to change. You don't need to find a fixer-upper, and you shouldn't settle for a fixer-upper, because you may never be able to fix them. Okay, so that's lifestyle. There are obviously other kinds of lifestyle things. Perhaps, some lifestyle things don't matter, but sometimes they do matter to some people. Like, for example, let's say that you are someone who's a vegetarian, but you might not mind if you start dating someone who isn't a vegetarian. But other people who are vegetarians may actually really mind if the person they're dating isn't a vegetarian. So it depends on what's really important to you, okay? So another thing is wants. Okay, that's the other thing that, if that is not in alignment, especially what you want in life, what they want in life, what you want in life, if they're not in alignment, that's also going to cause a few problems, especially those important things when it comes to your relationship. So obviously, it doesn't matter if the kind of job that you want and the kind of job that they want, perhaps that doesn't matter too much. Sometimes it can. It depends on, like, let's say they really like night shifts, whereas you prefer to go to work in the day. Obviously, then you'll be like passing ships in the night and you won't be able to spend as much time together. But for some couples, perhaps that works out well for them. But again, like I go back to, it depends on what you are personally looking for. So other things that I think are absolute deal breakers are things like getting married, right? If you don't want to get married, then and you meet someone who you really like, but they do want to get married, right? There's going to be a huge conflict there. Another big one, and this may be even more bigger than marriage, is children, right? If you don't want kids and you're really adamant on that, if you start dating someone and they really do want kids, you need to end that connection right away, because either you're going to end up miserable because you're going to concede to having kids, or you're going to make that person and they're going to concede to not having children, and they're going to be miserable. If someone really wants to have kids, like yourself, or perhaps you don't, and you start dating someone who does, you have to let that person go, and you have to stop that connection, because kids are a really big life milestone. And some people that want kids, it's like one of their main deal breakers, okay? And even if they fall head over heels in love with you, and you don't want kids, they're going to be deeply unhappy, and they're going to feel that in their life. And perhaps they're just conceding because perhaps maybe they think they can change your mind about it. So, having kids, another big one. You have to want those sorts of things, right? Do you want marriage? Do you want kids? You've got to, figure that kind of stuff out. You may not want to ask these type of serious questions on a first date, but I guess it depends on how you word it, right? You could say, oh, what are your thoughts on marriage? What are your thoughts on having kids? Or do you have any kids? Because who knows, perhaps they already have some. So, you've got to figure out what's going on there, okay? It's a huge deal breaker with that sort of thing. So you've got to figure out that. And if you meet someone who isn't aligned with you, don't assume that you can change them to your way of thinking and to get them to concede. So there's there's a few other things as well, that maybe matter to some people that don't matter to other people. Like, for example, let's say that you are someone who's a huge music enthusiast. If you meet someone who has a really poor taste in music, then perhaps that could be a deal breaker for you, right? But for another person, perhaps it wouldn't be. Let's say someone who isn't like a hardcore fan of some sort of band, or they don't really mind what's on the radio. I'm a little bit like that. I'm quite chill with music. I'm not like a die-hard fan of a certain kind of genre that I can only listen to that. So I'm quite flexible with music, so I don't mind what my wife puts on the radio. So some people it matters if, there's a huge mismatch in music, but in other relationships, it's a massive problem, and it can be a really big issue. So there's little things like that as well. So you've got to figure out what you value, what's important to you, and you've got to find someone who likes those sorts of things, who lives the same way that you do. Because if you don't, and you meet someone who is completely misaligned with who you are as a person, and they don't behave in the way that you want, then they don't want the same things that you do, and they live a completely different lifestyle, there is going to be arguments, there is going to be conflict, and one of you is going to end up miserable. And if one of you ends up miserable, that means both of you will probably end up miserable. Okay, so it's really important to know what you want, okay? So my story with this and incompatibility and things is, I talk about the story all the time, but the reason why I talk about it is because I do think it's a good example, especially of mismatch of, what people want and things like that. And that is the first relationship that I ever got into, that I was in for a year, and that woman actually cheated on me. But there were other issues as well, okay? And it was a lot of, mismatching values. So obviously the big one there, the one that's staring us in the face, is they didn't value fidelity, right? They were unfaithful, whereas I did value fidelity, right? So that's a big one, okay? That was a big one, obviously a massive mismatch in values. So there's that one. That's one red flag right there. But again, I chose to ignore it because I thought maybe I could change her and things like that. But obviously, I was very naive to think that. And she didn't change her behaviour for me. Another thing was she really liked to go out drinking and partying and doing all that kind of thing. I didn't mind doing that some of the time, because when I met her, I was in my early 20s, and that kind of lifestyle still kind of appealed to me a little bit. But because she was doing it so frequently, like most weekends, sometimes even a day during the week, getting back home at like 4 a.m. and things like that. Whereas, I didn't mind doing that sort of thing, but I was never the kind of person to want to do it every week, right? Not even, it may be like once a month, maybe even a stretch twice a month, but not so frequently like what she did. Another thing was she was a smoker and I wasn't a smoker. That was another thing. I'd rather prefer to have done things like, go out in the day, go and have a nice walk somewhere, or go for a swim in the swimming pool. But she didn't want to do that kind of stuff. She wasn't as keen in doing that. She would rather get drunk and that sort of, and just, and do that kind of stuff and go clubbing. Whereas I wasn't a huge fan of that. And she was a huge fan of going clubbing, whereas I wasn't. Like, if we were going to drink, I would prefer it if we had like a house party or something like that. I wasn't a fan of going to clubs. But again, she was. So again, it was a huge, huge mismatch, right? A huge mismatch in values, in wants and things like that. So that was my story with being with someone who I was incredibly incompatible with, okay? But the thing is that I think sometimes, I made a video recently on why we ignore red flags. And, I was just really happy to just have someone, because this was the first relationship I was really in, that I was really invested in. And I was really attracted to her. And I just didn't want it to end. I just wanted this to be it, right? And I was sick of being single because I'd never been in a proper relationship before. And I was just desperate to make it work, basically, and that's why I stayed for a year, even though during that year she had cheated on me, and I'd found out that she'd cheated on me multiple times, right? But it wasn't until it got to the last straw, basically, where it happened again, and I broke things off finally for good. But you live and you learn, basically. So the important thing to remember is when you start dating someone and you start getting to know someone, you start liking them, you got to realize and you got to see long term, okay? You're going to spend you could potentially spend the rest of your life with this person. So you got to make sure that you pick someone good and decent. And not only that, but someone who you have the same kind of lifestyle, you want the same things in the relationship, and you have the same kind of values, okay? You've got to figure that kind of thing out. Because not only is this person going to be your romantic lover, but they're also going to be your longest companion, okay? So at the beginning of our lives, we spend more time with family and with friends. But as we age, obviously family members start dying off, friends become even more distant from us because they have their own lives. So the person that you're going to be spending the most of your time with is your future spouse, because even if you have kids, eventually the kids are going to be up and gone and move out, and you're going to be left in your twilight years with this person. So you got to make sure that not only are they your romantic lover, but they're someone that you like to spend your time with. You have a laugh, you like hanging out with them, right? Because I see so many different couples, and it seems like a common thing as well. So many couples that live separate lives, like they have different friendship groups, which I think is actually quite healthy and to some degree, but they spend the weekends apart from each other. She's out doing whatever and he's doing his own thing, and they have no shared common interests that they like to do together. They don't have activities that they do together. Like one of the things that me and my wife do is we like to go to different places and have a walk. Like we like to find new little places that we can have a walk to, have a hike to, and things like that. That's something that we both enjoy doing together. And we also have the same sort of taste in movies and watching TV shows, so we like to do that together. We don't agree on everything when it comes to watching things on Netflix or certain movies, but the majority of the time we do actually enjoy that time and interacting with each other as we're watching things, getting each other's reactions on things and having a conversation about what's going on. And we love to do that, right? So we enjoy each other's company, because I know some people who are in relationships and they can't stand each other. They can't stand the sight of each other. And they live essentially separate lives, even though they're living under the same roof and sleeping in the same bed. You've got to spend your life with this person, okay? I feel like sometimes people consider more about buying a house and how much the house is going to be, bargaining, figuring out if it's the right area, if it has enough rooms, if it's if it's a fixer-upper, or if it's something they can move straight into. A lot of people consider more about buying a house than they do the person they're going to be living in that house with, and perhaps even living in multiple houses with, if they sell up and downsize or upsize or whatever, right? So, I feel like a lot of people take more time in consideration into that than they're actually the actual person that they're going to spend their life with. So don't settle for someone who isn't right for you, essentially, okay? It's important that you find someone who you can enjoy being around, not just the romantic side. Now, of course, the romantic side is important, and those should be living side by side. You should be attracted to them. You should have that romantic feeling towards them. But you should also like them and enjoy their company and have shared interests that you can do together, right? So thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to get in touch with me personally and you'd like coaching with me, then please go to www.christineloveridge.com. Thank you so much for watching, and if there's anything you would like me to discuss in a future video, then please leave it down in the comments. Goodbye.